McAllister was one of two women who juggled running the WD with raising children in these decades. When she became WD director, her daughter Mary was 12 years old and Claire was 8. She moved her daughters with her to D.C. and was functionally a single mother for most of her time as WD head because her husband was elected to the Michigan Supreme Court in late 1937. Tom McAllister was offered a federal judgeship in December 1940, and McAllister did not believe it was appropriate for a judge's wife to be doing partisan work for the president while her husband was on the federal bench. She was also undoubtedly ready to reunite her family. Gladys Tillett took over from McAllister at the beginning of 1941. Tillett was born in 1891 in small-town North Carolina. As a student at North Carolina State Normal College in Greensboro, she was an active suffragist, and once the 19th Amendment passed, she became a founder of both the North Carolina League of Women Voters, LWV, and the Mecklenburg County LWV chapter in Charlotte. Tillett spent her life working for feminist causes. In 1974 and 1975, in her 80s, she was the chairwoman of North Carolinians United for the ERA. Tillett's story is unique in many ways from those of the other four women. She was the only Southerner. She was the only one of the 5 who spent her life working in feminist politics. Tillett was also a working mother, but her children were slightly older than McAllister's. Her daughter Sarah, the youngest of her 3 children, was 15 in 1941. But instead of moving Sarah with her to Washington, Tillett divided her time between Washington and Charlotte, keeping a secretary in her Charlotte house and commuting weekly when she wasn't on the campaign trail. McAllister and Tillett's tenures as WD directors were critical steps to moving the job out of the Roosevelt's personal orbit and into the regular functioning of the DNC. But that transition wasn't fully realized until after Roosevelt was no longer president. When FDR died in April 1945, several years of infighting within the DNC ensued. The woman guiding the WD's ship through the tumult was India Edwards, who became Tillett's second-in-command after the 1944 campaign and the Women's Division Director in 1948. She was a relative newcomer to party politics, having spent over 2 decades as a journalist focused on women's and society news in Chicago before moving to Washington, D.C., when she married her 3rd husband in 1942. A year later, her son was killed in action during World War II, and Edwards threw herself into political work. She was known throughout Democratic circles for being hardworking, thorough, and someone who would do everything in her power to get her way and get the job done. Party women described her as not afraid to work and someone who would not take no too easily. Her hard-working, hard-driving personality served Edwards very well as she helped Harry Truman secure one of the biggest upsets in presidential history.